And when I asked you if you'd been busy, you said you'd joined a networking thing this morning. And what I'm interested in, that you seem very good at doing, that I think is something that would be very valuable for a lot of people would love to know about, is you seem to be very good at getting work for yourself as a self-employed consultant and trainer. So I often see you posting on social media with a picture of yourself in some exotic location like Hem or Hempstead or Hereford or wherever it was.
Well, it used to be more. It used to be more exotic. It was Newmarket, actually.
Newmarket
Was the most recent one.
And I know you've been abroad and in
Yeah.
the last year and so on. So I know because you're often posting about that on social media. So with evidence, photographs. So I know you're really doing it. And you seem to be very good at getting that kind of work. That sort of, I know that you've been doing some of that online as well, doing some online training delivery. And it seems from what I've observed that you're very good at creating that flow of work from networking. And maybe that's not the case, but that's how it appears. So through the social media posts, you seem to be communicating, here's some training that I'm doing, and therefore other people might look at that and think, oh, we'd like some of that. You seem to be communicating, I'm busy, and therefore I'm good and worth hiring. And I'm doing lots of interesting things, and I'm going interesting places, and these are the sort of people I'm working with. So you seem to be using social media to communicate all of that. And I know you've got your newsletter now as well. So that's really the context and what I'm interested in. And it's specifically around how you're able to generate, because lots of people are networking, they're posting stuff on social media, but it isn't necessarily converting into work for them or sales leads for them. But for you, I can see that it is. So from your point of view, what do you think that it is that you're doing that makes all of that work for you?
Right, well, there's a number of things. Are we recording this now, Peter, by the way?
Yes, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, okay. That's fine. Right, what am I doing? There's a number of things. Firstly, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing what I do for a while, and training and stuff. And then the networking I have been doing since before the days of social media, to be honest. So I've been suffering for about 20 years. And if you go back 20 years, Facebook was in its still quite an early iteration, for example, as was LinkedIn. And I wasn't using those tools 20 years ago as well. And as it happens, I've had a call this afternoon with someone's going to speak on a CIPD event, another networking kind of thing. And we were talking about how word of mouth works in 2020. And the way that word of mouth works, and this is something I've learned, is that some people think that when you're networking, it's a result of what you're doing on social media. I actually don't have that philosophy. That social media, for me, is there to back up what I'm doing in word of mouth. So let me tell you a story. And this has happened on a number of occasions. I'm sorry, being vague about the numbers. So here's a story. This happened about 4 years ago. In an office in Leicester, someone is chatting to an HR consultant, and they're saying, we need, our people don't understand finance. We need someone to come in and train them in finance. And the HR consultant says, I know who does that. There's a guy I know called Phil Engel. And they said, right. And then what they did was got their phone out, right? And on the spot, they say, what's his name again? Phil Engel? Yeah. And straight off, they get on the top of the Google search my website and my LinkedIn profile, and about one finger scroll down is my Facebook profile and Twitter profile as well. And on the Google search, that's going to go alongside the other Phil Ingle, who is, I kid you not, a professional snowboarder and mountaineer, and who has his own website, and he's always posting pictures of himself, you know, skiing down Mont Blanc and snowboarding and stuff, which with those pictures look really well. But it's really, really apparent which Phil, if you're talking finance training, which Phil Ingle you need. And you, the snowboarder, I think, is good at snowboarding, and he's rubbish at finance. And I've never tried snowboarding, and I'm pretty confident I'll be rubbish at that. So what that means is that when it comes to networking, I've been physically in a room with people that have understood what I've done and somehow left an impression on them. And then when it comes to it, when someone needs some help and you know, the name Phil Ingle comes into their mind, someone else backs it up on social media, right? So that's one element. There is another element to this as well where social media comes in, is that the LinkedIn posts, and so I put another one up this morning which showed people I was physically working back in a room in Cambridgeshire with a group of scientists. That's gone up this morning. That LinkedIn will put that up in front of a number of my connections, which means that some of my connections, for a nanosecond, when they are scrolling through their LinkedIn feed, will see a picture of me in Cambridgeshire, as it was last Friday. But as you've also said, over the years, I've been in all sorts of other places, and because you're in other places, that also grabs the attention as well. And that means for a little nanosecond, it might be months since they last saw me, but for a little nanosecond on LinkedIn, they see me and they think, oh yeah, Phil Ingle. Right, he's
pause you there for a moment, Phil.
Yep.
So when they see that picture, what is it that you feel they need to see in, what are the key elements that picture needs to have in it?
Me. And usually some illustration that I am somewhere doing something. Now, I think, to be brutal, it doesn't matter what I'm doing or where I am particularly. And as you said, I have been lucky to get to some places which people find interesting, actually, which I find interesting. So the start of this year, I did 2 trips to Oman. So I was in Muscat. And if you're in Muscat in January and you put a picture of yourself walking down the beach, your connections in the UK will look at it because it's unusual as well. I also ran a course in Southern Ireland at the beginning of March, just before lockdown as well. Southern Ireland climatically is very different, like it's raining, but it's something. Yeah, I say it's not necessarily an everyday thing, albeit somehow I seem to have acquired a bit of a reputation as it, like Muscat on the beach one day and Southern Ireland the next, is kind of every day for me. If you look at my calendar, it's not literally every day, but people get this perception. And because I've been doing this a long period of time, I've been lucky. I've been at some fab places. I've obviously also had some dodgy hotel and taxi experiences along the way, but have survived those. Doing that lets people know that I'm in places doing things as well.
So it seems from what you're saying that the connection, you know, the HR manager saying we need somebody to do finance training, that's obviously has an element of randomness to it. That's unpredictable or uncontrollable.
Yeah.
But what you can control is when they think of if you've had contact with them, you can influence more the connection they make between that specific requirement and what you do. So I think before I
Oh,
was
Pete,
thinking about talking to
sorry to interrupt you there, mate. And I know we're free to interrupt each other on this, so I don't quite hold with the influence thing quite that much. Let me tell you what I think I'm in control of, and what I'm influencing.
okay.
I'm in control, and what I'm influencing is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Courtesy of social media, and one of the call that I was on this morning was discussing social media and using LinkedIn marketing. Okay, and I've been on numerous calls over the years, so I was looking at this again this morning. There is a LinkedIn algorithm, which means that whatever I put on LinkedIn, for example, that I have got no control over that. I can control me putting something on LinkedIn, but I cannot control who LinkedIn puts that in front of. Now, what I have discovered this morning is one or two little techniques which might influence the LinkedIn algorithm a little bit, but it is a long way from controlling who sees it. But what I would say is I'm in the same position here as Coca-Cola, all right, which is pretty grand, and it put myself in the same position as a world bestriding behemoth corporation, all right, namely Coca-Cola. One of the things Coca-Cola, like it or not, are brilliant at is their advertising and marketing. Yeah, they are still in the position, I believe, that for all the money they spend on marketing and advertising, all the rest of it, half of it is wasted and they don't know which half. In other words, they're going to put up a big billboard poster about Coca-Cola or a Coca-Cola product, which may be Costa Coffee or Instant Smoothies or whoever it is, all of which are Coca-Cola products. So they're going to put up an advert there, and it might be on TV or it might be on social media somewhere as well. And so they're going to put an advert up there. And for a nanosecond or a few seconds, someone will think of Coca-Cola. There's also going to be a large number of people, I don't know how many, maybe someone in Coca-Cola does, but there's going to be a large number of people that will physically think Coca-Cola, yeah, I've seen that, been there, done it, ignore it, move on, let's find something else to scroll onto as well. So lots of people are advertising in different ways, whether it's social media and other media, their product, and lots of other people are either ignoring it, either looking at it and thinking, oh, Coca-Cola, oh, I must get one of those, or possibly looking at it passively and thinking, yeah, whatever, and not really doing that. They're doing the same thing with my pictures. So the picture I put up this morning of me in Cambridgeshire delivering a finance training session, which is way less interesting than a bottle of Coca-Cola. There'll be some people that think, oh, right, Phil's doing finance training again, flipping heck, all right, oh, right, okay. And there'll be some people that think, oh, Phil, Gordon Bennett, I'm sick of Phil, find someone else. And there'll be some people that do not physically see it at all because the algorithm doesn't let.
So what I meant by control and influence is, and I think certainly from what you're saying, that social media has come along, and that's handy. But actually, even if you were face-to-face networking, what you can control is what you say to somebody.
Yeah.
And what you say to them then has an influence later on, because if you hadn't have said that, they wouldn't have associated you with finance training when they're talking to the HR manager.
Right. So yeah, yes, and there's a little but on here, is that when you're networking, which is the context we're talking about here, one of the things is when you're networking, you can be talking about what you do and how you help people. You are almost certainly not going to be able to help them at that moment. Okay. What will happen, and by the way, if I've been out on my own 20 years, I can think of 2 occasions. These were both physical, face to face, right? When I've been talking, well, one was when I was talking about what I do, and someone then said, really, that's really interesting, because actually, Phil, I'm talking to someone about, and okay, can we talk about this? Okay, so I think about one other, and then there was another occasion, there was a networking meeting, and it was astoundingly in a nightclub in Leamington. This was during the day, I would stress. We were in a nightclub in Leamington. I was walking up the stairs, and there's a guy in my network who I know through LinkedIn, James Pennington, his name, he's a lovely guy. I'm walking up the stairs, I go, oh, Phil, I need to talk to you. Phil, I was hoping, you know, I need to talk to you because I've come across this thing. Do you do sales training? Yeah, right, Phil, because, and hey ho. All right, so you're on the stairs in a nightclub in Leamington, and you're talking about, can you do sales training? Because what's needed is this, you know, and straight into the conversation. So that's happened to me twice in 20 years, right? The rest of the time, it's when you're networking, right? What's going to happen at the time is nothing, okay? And then a conversation will happen to someone you're networking with in an office in Leicester, you're unaware of, and someone will say something and they'll think, well, yeah, well, what about Phil Engel? And then the other person says, who? Ah, is it them? Okay, is that right? Is it yeah, oh, sorry, yeah, is it this guy with the sunglasses? Is that him? And I go, yeah, that's him. Oh, right, okay, let's have a look at his website. And they'll watch 15 seconds of video that I've got on my website, and they'll then want to give me a ring or not. Now, there is another element to this as well, which I do not know, I'm unaware of, is that there's all the times where someone said, you know, we need some training doing. And someone said, well, you know, Phil Engel could do it. And they go, yeah, what, Phil Engel? Yeah. And look at this and I think, are you joking? Him? You must be kidding. No, we're not having him. Don't like him. Oh, of course, I know. Who knows?
But
that undoubtedly happens.
Talking about you, then that can never happen. So what I had in mind that I really wanted to sort of dig into with you was the idea of positioning, because I think one of the things that I've observed you doing is positioning yourself. Because if you're not positioned in terms of you're not in front of the right people saying the right things, then you've got no chance of those other events happening downstream. So when you're thinking of positioning yourself, whether it's online, whether it's through a post or an article you've written, whether it's face-to-face talking to somebody, how do you think about doing that? What are you thinking about when you are, and by positioning yourself, I mean that making that clear connection about what it is that you do, that you want to be remembered for?
So the positioning thing is something I think you always have to be working on. Coca-Cola are working on their positioning right now somewhere around the world. All right, so this is a job that is never complete. It's only work in progress. What do I do in terms of positioning? I would like to think I do three things. Firstly, I go to the places where the people that I want to meet are going to be. Now, obviously in 2020, that means you're online. But what's led me to many CIPD meetings is the fact that people that want training are often in the land of HR and of learning and development. And those what people want training, which is one of the things that attracted me to join the CIPD in the first place. So I now don't go, and that's why one of the reasons I go to CIPD meetings, and not just because I happen to be involved with the CIPD with yourself locally. All right. And therefore those people are kind of like my audience, not just CIPD. I also go to other groups as well. I'm involved with the Professional Speaking Association. I am involved with the local Chamber of Commerce as well, and the Royal Society for Arts as well, which is, you know, brings a different element. So I go to places where my people are, is first thing. The second thing is how I talk about myself. I have done training on networking skills, and therefore this is where we talk about elevator pitches, which is a horrendous term. And if you mention elevator pitch, there's going to be loads of people that are going to sigh and think, oh no, not this thing again. But what you've got to do is you've got to talk about yourself in a way that's going to be of interest to whoever it is you're talking to. So I don't usually say to people I'm a training consultant, because the word training, by the time you've finished the word training, all right, you say the word training, by the time you started the tr and you got to the new, okay, someone's already decided in their head, well, I don't need that. And then you use the word consultant, and then they're already, and by the time you get to the, all right, get to the word con, and that's what basically what they're thinking. And they think, oh, right, okay, so you ask the client for their watch when they want you to tell the time, you know? And they're going to think that. So training consultant really doesn't work. So I talk about what I do is more of a process rather than a job description a lot of the time. And talk about it as a process, as you will have gathered, suits me and my extrovert nature, because it gives me a chance to talk about myself rather than just say I'm a training consultant and shut up as well. So that's the second thing I do. The third thing, I would like to think I have an equal opportunities policy, which means that even if you're not in HR or learning and development or finance or something, and even if you don't want to talk about training, actually, I'm very happy to talk to you anyway. So I'll talk pretty much anyone about anything. I would like to think I could join in a conversation, really, whatever the context and whatever the situation. And in joining in that conversation, the best way of joining in any conversation is usually to listen as opposed to contribute. And this is just the two of us this afternoon, Peter, but believe it or not, there are sometimes I can shut up and listen, I think. Sometimes I have to work at shutting up and listening, but you join it, and whoever's there, wherever you are, shut up and listen, even if it's not what you have defined as a target business segment.
Well, that's interesting, because I can certainly see how listening is vital, but only listening isn't enough, because that doesn't allow you to position yourself. Oh, we like Phil, he was that quiet guy who listened intently to everything we said. They still don't connect you with finance. So it must be listening with a purpose.
Well, these things are interconnected, aren't they? Is that if you're positioning, how can you position if you don't know where someone else is coming from? So what I say to myself when I'm introducing myself to, say, people in the CIPD and the HR profession, I can get away with using more technical jargon than I would if I'm talking to, say, people in the Chamber of Commerce, which is a more general business environment. And then if I'm talking to finance professionals as well, then the word EBITDA will come in reasonably quickly, or a conversation about return on capital or something will come in far more frequently, because that's what that audience can understand, which isn't going to work if you or work nearly as well if you're talking in different places. So how do you position yourself? You need to do a bit of listening up front. You know, who are you talking to, and what is it you do?
So that's different to the marketing view of positioning, which is you go into a cave and you dream up your positioning statement, and then you come out and broadcast that to everybody. And it seems that...
Well, that's certainly the marketing view in 1985.
Well, I was watching a webinar on Sunday from somebody who was teaching, it was at the photography show, which was online, and a marketing expert teaching photographers how to market themselves. And that's exactly what she was saying. You come up with your positioning and what you want to be, regardless of what's out there. And I think the marketing view is, if we shout that at enough people, then there's enough people will listen and buy that it, you know, allows us to show that.
Just out of interest, was the person doing this, is it possible that they had been born by 1985?
Yeah, I think probably after 1985.
Okay. So, something their dad taught them then.
Well, I think the interesting thing that you're saying is more in what, in my mind, I would align with sales approach, which is we can't position ourselves as an absolute. I am XYZ, or I do XYZ. We position ourselves relative to the other person. So not what am I, but what am I to you, potentially.
But and this is positioned the world over. So forgive me harping on about Coke. Sorry, I mentioned Coke, what I thought was incidentally a few minutes ago. So I'm just going to stick on this thing. Coca-Cola do exactly the same thing. So you can have a 250 ml can of Coca-Cola from a vending machine in a really horrible railway station, all right, for a few coins or a tap of a card. You can also have a Coca-Cola for £25 in a really nice iced glass with a paper straw, and it'll be on a plate with a doily, brought to you on a tray by a uniform waiter in a top hotel in London. Now, Coca-Cola's vision, I use Coca-Cola as an example, actually, I guess why I'm thinking about it. Coca-Cola, if you look at their vision statement, is very much about not what the drink is, but about the experience and what it does for the person. And they position themselves in multiple different ways, even though it is exactly the same product.
See, so I'm guessing that if I was to say to you, well, tell me how you position yourself right now, you couldn't do that unless you knew something about who I was, where I was coming from, what my job might entail. You could only say something that was relevant or related to me. It's not an absolute.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you use your experience to do that, but the way in which I'm positioning myself is you listen to where someone else is coming from. So last week, someone found me by, they said organic search, okay, to do some training in operational risk management for financial services across Asia. And this was a training company based in Singapore. Sorry, in Kuala Lumpur. But they have Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And they found me by organic search, and they couldn't remember if it was Google or LinkedIn, but I think it was Google from what they told me as well. What they were wanting was actually something quite different from what the company I was working with in Cambridge wanted as well. So there was a topic difference for a start. There was a methodology difference. People in Cambridge wanted me physically in the room because frankly they'd had enough, they'd done this online stuff and they're getting a bit bored with it. All right, they have more impact if you're physically there with them, Phil. All right, I'll come. Yeah. Whereas doing online is far more convenient if you're working in Asia, especially just at the moment as well. And there were different audiences. So in Cambridge, I was working with a group of scientists, but the market segment that was being aimed at in Asia was financial services. And then, of course, you've got some cultural differences between the UK and Asia as well, which are also relevant. So some of that information came to me from an email because I had an email from the company in Asia, and I could tell it's a company in Asia, and they told me a bit about what they wanted, but it wasn't until we got on the phone. And actually, when we got them on the phone, they said, "So Phil, this is what we want out. So can you tell us more about operational risk management?" And my first response was, "Yeah, of course I can. But tell me, what is it you do and what is it you're aiming at?" So straight away, someone invites me and says to me, "So Phil, can you position your offering in this arena with us now?" And I say, "Yes, but before I do that, you tell me about what you want." Right? Because that absolutely then changes the way the conversation goes.
Mm. So I'm getting a sense of what's driving all of this for you, what's motivating you to do this. And you've mentioned a number of times about saying something that's interesting, or talk about yourself in a way that's of interest, that's catching people's attention or their interest. So there's something here about relating to people in a way that more than interests them, impresses something upon them. And I'm guessing from that also to be memorable. So there's something underneath all of this for you that's making this not only possible but easy for you, I guess, which is you finding new outlets through which to be of interest, to make an impression on people, to be memorable, and then at some later date, not only to be memorable, but then to convert that into something that's going to be useful or valuable in some way for that person. So it's more than just being remembered.
Well, look, you got to be memorable, and I think there's very few people that are memorable on the basis of one interaction, okay, or one thing that they do. I mean, in the world of music, you know, you might have a favorite piece of music, but it's probably not the only piece of music that whoever made that piece of music made for you. Okay, they made loads and loads of records, and loads of songs, but there's one that strikes you, but you would have seen all the other work they do as well. Okay, Coca-Cola is memorable because they're always putting themselves in front of you in some way. You know, whether it's a little tiny logo on the number on the front of an athlete, or you know, an advertising hoarding or something. So this being memorable is because it's not you are memorable, it's you are doing something to be remembered. And I say most people that are memorable, famous even, aren't famous because they're doing one thing. They do lots and lots and lots of things, and over a period of time.
So what is it that, above all else, what would you most like to be remembered for?
Gordon Bennett, here we go. I guess primarily to be a husband and father, and indeed brother and friend who actually cared about the people who were closest to him. And I guess, like many other people, dare I even say it, you want to be remembered for your contribution that you've made to the world in some way. So it's sorry, Pete, this might be completely random. All right, so I might be talking complete rubbish here.
Go for it.
I think, though, that you know I like motorbikes. Did you? Although I've got a motorbike.
I might have known that and then forgotten it again.
Yeah, all right. So not that memorable, was it? There you go. We'll do this again now. So look, I've always liked motorbikes, and one of the things I've saying with a motorbike is whatever motorbike I've bought is that it's going to be better for the next owner than when I first had it. Okay, even when you buy one from new, okay, all right, and it's brand new, you still add things to it and stuff that makes it like more desirable and stuff like that. In other words, what I'm looking to do is leave something better than I found it. Okay. Now, I would like to think that that's what I'm doing in a professional arena. Incidentally, by the way, we sold my wife's car over the weekend. All right, and astoundingly, we got more for it than we paid for it. Okay, because we put it in better condition when we found it. Okay, now the car thing, it seems like a stupid example, but in a professional sense, this is what you're looking to do: is make a contribution, is leave someone in a better state than when you found them in some way. So the people I was working with on Friday in Cambridge, the scientists, I have had feedback to say that I left them in a better state than I found them. Not least because the state they were in when I found them on Friday morning is they came into a room with me thinking, oh no, I've got a day of finance with this bloke. Oh, this is going to be horrendous. And actually they found it wasn't horrendous. I was given feedback that actually they'd even enjoyed some bits of it. And that they discovered some things which they didn't know, which have left them in a better state than you found them. And that is the mission for all of us, which may even be driven by the fact that we're all very aware at the moment that that individually we're striving to make a contribution and leave things in a better state than we found them, and at the same time are signally failing to do that from a global environmental perspective.
Would you say that you are entirely comfortable talking about yourself?
Not entirely.
And the reason I ask is because when I ask you a question that's specifically about you, for example, what you want to be remembered for, it's not long before you change the subject and start talking about something else. So I find there's this interesting paradox between you and also you want to be memorable, you want to be of interest, you want to be memorable to make an impression, and at the same time not entirely comfortable saying I am this, I am great because I'm really good at, and so you change the subject a little bit and you end up talking about something that's maybe a little bit peripheral, something that might be an interesting subject for the person but isn't directly about you. So it's not creating a risk where the other person's going to say, well, I don't think you're that good, and I don't think you're this, and so you're moving the subject slightly away from you, still in the sort of field of it might be a common interest. There might motorbikes, cars, whatever. It might create a common interest for us to talk about. So it seems that you're both positioning yourself and not at the same time. You're positioning yourself within this sort of area of subject matter that the other person could be potentially very interested in.
But you see, if you go, but with any of us, Peter, if you go really big picture, there's not a lot to talk about. We are pretty insignificant.
and yet,
I mean, if you look at lots of people that are famous and have made great contributions to the world throughout history, and things, and they might be leaders of business or politics or religion, or elsewhere in society, or expertise and stuff like that. As we now live in a world of 7 billion people, okay, that's just at the moment. If you look at all the people that have lived throughout history, okay, then there's maybe double that number. All right, that's guesswork, not science. All right, okay. So, but something like this. So, in the context of 15, 20 billion people that have ever lived the earth, Phil Engel doesn't make the needle flicker much on that kind of
interesting because
scale. But then neither does Bill Gates.
But one of the things you said you wanted to be remembered for is your contribution to the world. If that contribution to the world is noticeable, surely that makes you significant.
Well, and when we talk about world, is what's the world? Because on a global 7 billion people scale, Phil Engel isn't making the needle flicker. At the same time, for a few minutes on Friday, I made 8 people's needle flicker. And maybe as human beings, this is what we are there to do. And I'm afraid we're back in the land of the horrifically cliched starfish story.
Well, before you get onto that, one of the things when I asked you about what you wanted to be remembered for, you said a husband, father, brother, friend who actually cared. And that was an interesting use of the word actually. So what does actually cared mean? It doesn't pretend to care or doesn't go through the motions, but actually demonstrates caring in some other way, and maybe cares about people enough to leave something better than you found it, or leave a person better than you found it. So there's something in here as well about whatever caring means, what that
Well,
actually.
or maybe it's someone who does actually care, but even if it seems like they don't sometimes. So I think, Pete, we started off this conversation, might have been before the recording, talking about a conversation which I had. Well, actually, it's a text exchange. I suppose that counts as conversation these days. This is 2020. All right, so a conversation on WhatsApp, which I had with my daughter. Yeah, talking about something which I know is really, really important to my daughter. In fact, it's basically the only thing she's thinking about at the moment. And her response to me, just before I came along to you, was, yeah, oh, thanks for the sympathy, Dad. Right, with an emoji of herself with her, head in hands, as well. Okay. Oh, thanks for the sympathy, Dad. Yeah. Which is an indication, isn't it, that actually what I've been doing in that situation is caring. It just doesn't come across as caring. Yeah. So maybe I'd like her to know that I do actually care, even in times when it seems that I don't.
So what is the connection then between caring and being remembered by that person talking to an HR manager and looking you up for finance training?
Right, I think we could probably bring in another different cliche here, if you like, Peter, but hopefully this may be helpful. It will be that they will never care what you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm. They'll never know how much they'll never care how much you know until they know how much you care.
It's something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, some version or other of that, but that's pretty much it. Which, by the way, when you analyze that, means, sorry, actually it doesn't mean that. What this means is, when I have thought about that, the message that I take away from that phrase is, right, that unless you get onto their wavelength, they're not going to be interested in yours. In other words, the way that we as people approach each other is basically, it's all about me. Yeah. And therefore, when we talk about networking and positioning, what's the most important thing? It's not, hello, I'm Phil, I'm a training consultant. No one wants to flipping know that. However, if I say, right, I'll tell you about operational risk, but before I do, just tell me, what is it you do and how do you do it? If you get onto someone else's wavelength, then yes, you can position, but that is also a way of them knowing that you care.
Right. So I think we've both been to networking events in the past where we've met people who were very interested in what other people had to say, didn't say anything in return, and were forgotten before the night was out.
I think we were probably even there at the same time in the same place.
Well, I think we've also both been to events where we've met people who did nothing but talk about themselves and were not forgotten but dismissed.
Yeah, or remembered, right, because they talked about themselves, and on the basis that, flipping heck, if I never see them again, that'll be too soon.
Right. So remembered, but not necessarily for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to achieve here is a balance between, I need to listen enough to create interest and relevance, but I also need to talk enough that they're left in no doubt about what it is that I do. And the talent that I think that you have that makes that possible for you is this inner conflict between being memorable and making an impression, but also being on their wavelength and showing that you care. And that conflict moderates the balance between listening and talking to the point that you're able to listen enough and talk enough to make a connection and relevancy and get across something that's succinct enough to be memorable.
Conflict.
Yeah. And conflict, I don't mean argument. I mean conflict as in contradiction. You can't talk and listen. I want to be out there and I want everybody to know who I am. I want to be memorable. I want to be significant. And at the same time, I need to be able to listen and be on other people, to get onto other people's wavelength. And it's not about doing one or the other, but being able to moderate and balance those two apparently contradictory behaviors. So being the person who's really caring and passive and
so the words I'm struggling with here, Peter, are conflict and contradictory. I see complementary.
That's another way of saying it. Yeah.
Okay, but it's different take on it.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about the talking and the listening and the empathy side of things, those are different activities. Because as you say, if you're talking, you can't be listening, right? And I'm not right now. Okay, so I'm completely with you. Or at least, sorry, when I say you can't be listening, actually you won't be listening to the other person because they'll be shut up. What you are listening to is what you're about to say next. Okay, so that's where the talking and listening goes. So those two, but they are complementary activities and within the scope of human communication, right? Then what do you need to do to be good? You absolutely need to be able to do both.
So last couple of questions very quickly for you before we wrap up then. If you imagine yourself at a networking event, talking to somebody, and you're listening to them, you're in that phase where you are listening, you're getting used to their language, their level, their what it is that they do, area they work, you're acquiring all of that. What is the signal that you get within yourself that lets you know it's time to start talking about what it is that you do or something that's going to impress upon them?
Most of the time, I will wait for them to ask me.
And when you start talking about yourself, what you do, places you've been, been in Cambridge and so on, what is the signal inside that you get that lets you know you've said enough and it's time to listen to them again?
I would like to think that most of the time I'm going to be asking them first before I go.
Okay. But when you go, when you're at the point where you start talking about yourself, yeah. I'm going to guess you don't talk. You get to a point where you stop and you question them again, or you wait for them to respond. And I'm going to guess that you get a feeling that lets you know you've said enough. You don't want to lose the connection. You don't want to break the rapport and so on.
Right. So we're back in the end of elevator pitch here. And internally, I'm just thinking, is this about 15, 20 seconds? And if it's getting much beyond 30 seconds, then shut up and let them see if they're interested and let them see if they want to know more. They might want to ask me another question.
So I'm wondering what the cue is or the signal is that you're getting that brings your attention back to the fact that you might have said enough. Because as you said, you're thinking about the next thing you're going to say. So while you're talking about what you do, your finance training or whatever it might be, while you're talking about that, making those sorts of positioning statements, you're also aware of, are you aware of some feedback from the other person? Or is it entirely within yourself that lets you know it's time to give them a chance?
No, it's within me. And it's this awareness of, hang on, how long have I been talking now? And how much have they been talking? And the kind of inner voice will say, Phil, look, it's time for you to shut up. Because I'm quite capable of not shutting up and keeping going. I know I've got that ability. And extrovert personality means that you got the inner desire to keep going as well. Hence I am now. But there is an inner voice that comes in and occasionally just says, right, cut it there. Give them a chance.
Fantastic. And that voice that says, Phil, time for you to shut up, does that seem like it's your voice, or does it seem like it's somebody else's?
That's mine.
Your voice.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's it. That's all we need to know.
Well, if you've known something as a result of that, then excellent. And I'm glad that's of help. I hope I've made some sort of contribution. It's also possible that it's a complete load of rubbish and won't go anywhere. But it's been pleasant talking to you, Peter.
No, it's very interesting. This complementary action of the self-expression together with the listening. And I think if that isn't balanced, then that's going to leave them either not remembering or remembering you for the wrong reasons. So
by the way, it also means me forgetting them. One of the reasons that I think you said, you know, when do I know when to talk about me, is I'll wait for them to ask. Sometimes I'll wait in vain. Yeah, and if that's the case, then I'm aware that that's not because necessarily of what I do or who I am or anything else. That says actually more about them than it does about me.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I'm aware that you need to head off and do something else at 4 o'clock. So
there you go.
That
well, I hope that is of use for you, Peter, in some way, and you found it. I love talking about me, so that's really good. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. That's terrific. Most kind. Thank you, Phil.